Jessy, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. I actually came across you in one of the Instagram recommended reels, and you had me laughing right off the bat. So that was the one thing that I noticed from the very beginning is it's very clear to me that you love what you do and that you love sharing that enthusiasm with others. So thank you for your sense of humor at the same time.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So you're known as Slow Roamer on Instagram. So those that are listening, you should go out and do a follow, because between the cat videos and the commander videos and you getting stuck and unstuck and everything else, you are more of an overlander than most of the people who think they're pretty hardcore. So
well, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really thoughtful of you, because we had that conversation early when I contacted you. You said, well, I'm not really an overlander. And I think that that's important for people to remember, that you don't have to be an overlander to see the world. I think the goal is to explore in the ways that you want. And a special thanks to Onyx for their support of this week's podcast. Going further on your adventures is about having the right tools. The Onyx off-road app's intuitive maps make it easy to find trails and disperse camping. And their offline maps give you full GPS navigation capabilities, even without cell coverage. Personally, I use Onyx for every trip in North America because I always know who owns or manages the land that I'm traveling on. It also makes for a reliable track recorder, and I can filter the trails based on the four-wheel drive or motorcycle that I'm using. On my most recent trip in the Quartermaster, I used the Onyx to find trails near where I was staying in Joshua Tree. I used the difficulty rating and the elevation to determine which trails are best suited to the vehicle and the weather. Thanks again, Onyx, for your support of the Overland Journal podcast. Let's start off with the first question for you, which is, you talk a lot about slow travel. And what does slow travel mean to you?
Yeah, that is actually super important to me. It's actually the main reason I hit the road. I had been doing a lot of travel within the US and then also international. And one of my biggest takeaways from that was the feeling that I was always trying to pack so much in such a short amount of time. And a lot of that didn't allow me to be as present as I wanted to be on these travels, because I was just rushing to the next thing and always taking photos, and I couldn't really sit down inside of these experiences as much as I'd like to. And I also wanted to just kind of escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And so my goal when I was planning to live on the road was to slow way down and create time for me to just be, and to be present, and to be in nature, and to be more intentional, and to really live in these places that I was traveling to instead of just stopping by. I wanted to allow for more time to just really be able to sink my teeth in and appreciate the bigger feeling that you get from somewhere when you spend more time there.
And what's so interesting to me is that in your mind, it's this counterculture step, but I think it's actually how we should be living.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of people, they want to do van life or RV life or live on the road, and they kind of have a tendency to take the sort of programming that we have in our conventional life, which is hustle, 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 always be busy. They kind of take it into this lifestyle and they start rushing from one thing to the next, and then they burn out really fast. And I think that's partially why I've been able to stay on the road for so long, is because of how slow I move. Because I have experienced traveling a bit faster in the years that I've been on the road, and I did burn out pretty quick, and it actually got me to a point where I was like, maybe I'm over living on the road. Maybe this isn't for me anymore. And then sure enough, once I slowed down again, I was able to enjoy it. And yeah, it just makes you appreciate life a lot more when you have time to appreciate it. It seems silly to say, but we don't normally have time to appreciate it when we're living a conventional life. So unless you're crafting that time or you change the way you're living, it's the way to do it for me anyway.
Well, and I think that it's like any other new lesson in life is that you have to take the time to learn it. That we like, I think you use the word programming, and I like that perspective because I think we are taught from a
Yeah.
very young age to be productive, to
Hmm.
achieve these milestones of civilization. Whereas you don't actually have to do that. We get to make
Right.
choices.
Right.
You've made choices in your life that have allowed you to now experience more deeply. So you talk a little bit about being present. What do you think you've learned about yourself by being more present, by having that space and time?
Hmm. Well, I think it's only made me realize even more how introverted I am. Maybe it's even fed into that a bit. Um, I appreciate the peace and the quiet and stillness and slowness. And um, maybe I've even become like less sensitized to the noise of everyday life in a conventional way of living anyway. Um, but I think I don't know if it's like taught me anything about myself other than it's just affirmed that I am happier this way. Before I made this big choice, it was kind of going on a gut feeling. I was like, I think that I would like this and I think that I would want this, but I didn't know for sure because I'd never lived this way. And so
Mm.
now I know for sure that it suits me quite well.
Well, and we're used to, I mean, you think about humanity over the time, and it's only been so recent that we haven't been in a village. Now we're in these huge cities, and we have lots of acquaintances and very few friends. We have lots of interaction but very few connections.
Mhm.
So I think the way that you're living is more consistent with how people have lived, which is this more time to think, more time to connect, spend time with your cat.
Yes, quality time with the cat is always appreciated. And when I first hit the road, I thought that this was going to be a very solo adventure. And then I was like, I'm just going to be alone. I'm going to be doing my own thing. And it's actually been more about community than I could have ever imagined. I have met more people and I'm more social now than I ever was before. And I think a lot of that has to do with just meeting more like-minded people for the first time in my life. Um, and yeah, I feel like, having that sort of community feels almost less lonely, even though I know that's like a big concern for people that are looking to get into this lifestyle and some people I think still do feel lonely because it all depends on how much socializing you require. As an introvert, I don't actually require
Yeah,
that much.
sure, sure.
but but I'm getting more than enough. I see people, I make friends with my neighbor. I will, because of like just Instagram chatting with people, I'll be like, oh, you're in that area, like let's meet up. And so I feel like I connect with people quite often.
And we talked a little bit about the fact that you had met up with Matt and Amanda, who had a
Mm-hmm.
similar kind of RV to yours before they started doing some work with us. And I mean, when I think about the quality of those two people, like spending time with people like that, like Matt
Mm-hmm.
Swartz, I mean, it's just, there really are another level of human being in my mind. They're very thoughtful, and they not
Mm-hmm.
only care about connections, but they care about how they're interacting with the planet, and they care about how they
Yeah.
interact with other travelers, because like it or not, because of your following, you've become an ambassador for travel in many ways. So the way that you model how you live, I think really helps give people a sense of maybe a standard of how they should interact with others.
Yeah, I mean I try and set a good example and I hope that I'm doing okay with that because it is a responsibility, like when you're sharing your life online and you're sharing this lifestyle and getting other people into it, that you demonstrate, the proper ways to be boondocking and how to practice leave no trace and all of these things, because there is, people come out here and they don't always know. And I try and tell myself that a lot of what I see that, is disrespectful or not super great etiquette is just from a lack of education. So it is nice to be able to have a platform to be able to educate and talk about that stuff sometimes without hopefully being too preachy.
Well, you've done a good job of that. I think just some of the images that you've shown of trash or things that were burned or abandoned vehicles or tire tracks off into pristine desert. Those are things that you're modeling like that. This is not the right behavior.
Yeah.
And if you look at tread lightly, or if you look at leave no trace, that's one of the core tenets of both, is to become educated about things like cryptobiotic soil. We were just talking about southern Utah before we started recording, and those little microbes, those little living beings that are creating that cryptobiotic soil that helps to keep the whole desert from getting blown away. So it's really important. So I
bust
suspect
the crust.
Yeah, exactly. Don't bust the crust. But I mean, I remember when I first started going there, I didn't know. And I would be walking through it. I had no idea that what I was doing was so destructive.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of trails. We're not at all suggesting that people shouldn't go out and explore, but just stay on the trail. Or if you come to a campsite and you have 4 vehicles in your group and there's really only room for 1 or 2, go on down to the next campsite.
Yeah. Yep. It's common sense, but I think a lot of it does have to do with just education and making them aware of it, because I know when you know better, you do better, basically.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, I think in a lot of cases that's true. But coming back to the fact that you started in 2017, you had to have seen, especially with COVID, an absolute explosion of other campers out in the backcountry. I mean, I just went through Valley of the Gods last week, and it was shocking to me. There was actually a 5th wheel getting towed through that trail, which it had no place to be. And when I first started going there, 15 plus years ago, almost 20 years ago, you could find any of the campsites open. There was no one there. And now they're all full. So what are some ways that because you have a vehicle with a limited amount of capability, so how do you find sites without giving away any of your secret spots? What are some of the things that you do in order to find a great spot to boondock for a week or 2?
Well, I would say probably my number one thing is I go to places that people don't like very much. That's not always true. I'm in a really beautiful spot right now. But I think a lot of the boondocking that I see that is really, really popular is usually around some sort of a feature, like a national park. Yeah, Sedona, like a Moab, like these places that have a draw and they already have tourism. So I kind of avoid those places, and there's plenty of other public land and beautiful spots to go that aren't centered around a touristy area. And because I'm not interested in like some of the things that draws people to those places, like mountain biking or trying all the restaurants or, the stuff that people do in those places, I kind of just want to hang and be by myself and, do my work and look at nature and go for walks and whatnot. And so that suits me just fine. But yeah, I primarily use iOverlander. I think that's kind of the go-to for everybody. And I tend to focus on photos and then descriptions of the road in, because my rig is bigger and older. And so, I've made her do plenty of stuff she has no business doing, but I like to try and get a little preview of what I might be getting myself into. And
Sure.
then obviously I have to make sure that there's cell service so I can be working. But yeah, I think just staying away from those like really popular destinations. There's still plenty of spots where they're not totally saturated with campers.
And you seem to be spending a lot of time in Arizona, which has so much public land.
Yeah.
And it is very easy to get away from the big crowds. I find in Arizona, you can really find those special camp spots.
Yeah. I think after this many years on the road, my go-tos are Idaho, Arizona, Nevada. Um, yeah, that's usually about it. They're kind of like in my journey north for the summer and then my journey south for the winter, traveling with the weather. And I've kind of just concentrated to those states. Um, at this point, Nevada is a surprisingly uh, great place for me to be. They don't have it doesn't have like a ton of features other than some hot springs sprinkled around, but I just love driving there is so stress free, and it's just not a very populated state from
It's
what I've
not.
experienced. And there's just so many wide open spaces, and so Nevada's actually been a surprising little treat that I really enjoy going through.
Yeah, like Highway 50. I mean, they call it the loneliest highway. There is nothing and nobody
Yeah,
out
I've
there.
never
And
done it. That's
if you
east to
go to
west, right?
Ely, if you go to yeah, east west, if you go to
Yeah.
Ely, Nevada, you're up in the pine trees and nobody knows about that place.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of little hidden gems in Nevada, and I feel like when you think of Nevada as kind of just like flat desert, featureless, but there is pockets of like oasis or hot springs or fresh water, and then like life is just springing out of nowhere and makes it feel even more special.
Yeah. And Idaho is that way too. I mean, even though Idaho has become more popular, it isn't overly populated. So you
Hmm.
can get away in Idaho for sure.
Yeah, a lot of beautiful national forests in Idaho.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
sawtooths. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to send you some. I lived in Idaho for a while, and I'll have to send you some of the spots that I liked. But I mean, it's surprising. It's surprising how remote and sparsely populated that state is.
yeah, yeah, it's really pretty there.
So you tend to follow the weather. What are some tricks that you have found to keep yourself comfortable? Like, do you tend to focus on it being as cool as possible and then use heaters, or do you have an air conditioning in your vehicle?
I don't have an air conditioning. I don't have one in the dash, and I don't have one in the house.
Yeah, that's not it. Yeah.
I actually did have an air conditioning in the house, but I had to run my generator, use it, and it was so loud. You know, it was like 40 plus years old, and I'm like, I'm not going to use this. This is ridiculous. So I took it out and I put in a fan instead, and I use that all the time. Um,
Do you have like
but
is it a thermostat controlled fan? Because those really work well.
no,
No,
no, it's
turn
just
it
like
on.
I think it's a fantastic fan.
Those are great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gets air flowing, and Mander is like made of windows. So I can open everything up and air is always like circulating in here. Last year I got this little thing called an evapolar, which is like it's like really small. It's like a mini swamp cooler. So you put water in behind it, and then it, it doesn't cool the whole space down, but if you're sitting in front of it and it's like 100 degrees and it's blowing on you, it makes all the difference.
It's tolerable.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more comfortable. And then for my kitty, I keep these like they're like ice packs for coolers, but they're flat, kind of like a
Okay.
blanket, like a quilted blanket or something. And so I keep those in the freezer for her. And if it gets real hot, I put that on the ground with a towel and she goes and lays on it. But we
He
try
knows
not
what's
to
up.
do. Yeah, she knows exactly what to do. Um, but yeah, we try and do like I can't do like a ton of elevation in my rig because she does not like mountain passes. And I think
Oh, gotcha.
between the carburetor and then me being incredibly anxious trying to drive a mountain pass in a 45-year-old RV, we just don't mess with it that much. But we can get up to like 8,000 feet in the summer, so it stays pretty cool. And then in the winter, you know, I just go to like southern Arizona and run the heater at night, but it's doable. It's like glorified tent camping basically in here.
But you do have a kitchen. Do you tend to
I
cook
do.
most of your own food?
Yes.
And that
Yep.
way,
I have a
do you find that's a way to stay healthier on the road?
um yeah, I mean, I just am never really going into cities that much. I go into cities to restock and then I leave. So
Yeah.
I just don't have a lot of opportunity to go out to eat anyway. Um, but yeah,
And
I'm
it's
not much of a
expensive.
what's that?
And it's expensive to go eat out all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it definitely can add up. But yeah, I have a pretty decent sized fridge and freezer, and I have a 4 burner and an oven. But
Wow, cookies.
yeah, I could really be cooking it up in here, but I actually am not much of a foodie and I don't love cooking. And so I have an electric burner that I'm able to run off my solar, and I do almost everything on that. And yeah, I just keep it real simple, like smoothies and salads and, just very simple. I can make little pizzas on naan bread.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's all you really need, right?
Yeah,
Pizza,
you don't need
smoothies,
much.
and salad.
That's totally perfect. So your vehicle it's a Commander. What year is it?
It's a 1978 Dodge Commander.
Wow. So when did you buy that in 2017 when you first started, or did you kind of go from one vehicle into that?
So I bought her in 2016.
Oh, okay.
And I spent like a year and 3 months restoring and rebuilding and remodeling. And then, yeah, I hit the road in 2017. And I've been in her the entire time, except for there was like an 11-month period of time where me and my boyfriend at the time were actually traveling in a GXV, which
Oh, nice.
were you following me at that point? Did you see the
No,
GXV?
no, no.
Yeah. So we had it was like kind of his dream vehicle, and so I was like, all right, let's do it. And I put my rig in storage and we traveled around in that. We spent 3 months in Baja doing the whole peninsula. That was probably the most legitimate overlanding experience for people that want to be real strict about what overlanding means.
Yeah, I think it can mean whatever you want. So
Yeah. Yeah. But we had some adventures in that, and then he decided that that was just way too much vehicle for him. And so he sold it, went back to a Sprinter van, and I came back to my beloved RV.
yeah, the GXVs are nice. I've traveled with them a little bit. It's such a commitment of resources to do one of those, and because I like to travel internationally, some of the they call it a carnet, but it's the bond that you have to have against the vehicle when you're traveling around the world. It's sometimes 2 or 3 times the value of the vehicle that you have to post a bond on. So I've never seen the incentive to have, $1 million sitting in the bank.
Yeah.
Someone could take from you at any moment if they decided to. So,
Oh, yeah. We didn't even consider taking it overseas. I think he was just kind of getting his feet wet, and
yeah,
we did Baja, and he, came from traveling in a Sprinter van, so he had never really driven a big rig, and he was really kind of overwhelmed with that experience and decided that a
I think
smaller vehicle was better. Yeah.
they almost always are better. You can get into
Mhm.
more places. You can ship them less expensive. They
Yeah.
don't have as many complexities. You're not maintaining quite as much stuff. And it seems like you do a lot of the work on your own vehicle.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much 99% of it. There's only been a couple
How
times
cool is
where
that
I have,
though?
huh?
How cool is that you get to like work on your own machine?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I wanted to learn how to be self-sufficient, and I definitely have. And some of it has been out of necessity, and some of it has been out of stubbornness. And yeah, it's really, I don't always enjoy having to fix things, but I'm always really proud of myself after I do. And so, yeah, it's satisfying to know my vehicle so well and know how to fix everything.
Well, and it keeps the cost down, and it allows you to use that vehicle for longer because you're
Hmm.
able to maintain it. But it does seem as if in your travels that it is your little home away from home, and you've made it your own, and it's become something that's comfortable for you to spend time in. So
Yeah.
it seems like
Yeah,
it
it's
really works.
my home. It's not even my home away from home. It's my home.
Yeah. Home on wheels.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit now that we've talked about home. Let's talk a little bit about work. So a lot of times people they want to understand a little bit about what it means to live and work on the road. So maybe give the listener a little bit of an overview of the things that you do for work that allow you to stay on the road.
So as of right now, I am a full-time content creator. I also do one-on-one consulting with anybody that is interested in living on this road and they have questions, or people that have started living on the road and they're not doing so well and they need help. And then I also wrote a guide, and I'm in the process of revamping that. So that will be re-released soon. But yeah,
And
that's what I'm.
how do people find the guidebook?
Well, the guide isn't for sale yet because I'm redoing it. So I took it.
I see. Yeah.
I took it off my website. But my one-on-one consulting is linked through my, yeah, any of my pages. But my Instagram page, you could probably find it the easiest. Just a link in bio.
And that's how someone could reach out to you and then pay you for consulting and support on, how to earn a living, how to be a content creator, influencer. Is that the kind of services that you're providing?
So I don't find that people are typically reaching out to me for those reasons. They're more about, how do I find camping? What am I going to do about like cell service? How do I feel safe? How can I make it more comfortable traveling with my pets? It's more about like fears and concerns about living on the road. I actually just had a consult today, and she was just feeling really stuck and not sure where to start. She had gotten an RV and she just didn't really know what her next step should be. And she was feeling kind of overwhelmed. And we talked about driving anxiety, and she was also a little nervous to try boondocking. So I recommended to her some of these other camping options that that she could have that weren't going to like RV parks. And so just kind of like basically giving people the resources and answers to a lot of questions that they have.
Yeah, that you've learned over a lot of travel. I mean,
Yeah,
what an
6.5 years.
what an incredible resource. Well, let's talk a little bit about the anxiety of traveling solo. What are maybe your top 2, 3, 4, or 5 things that you would share with someone that is feeling anxiety around driving a larger vehicle or finding a campsite? What are some of the things that you would give them general advice? Of course, they can get more detail from you with a consult, but what are some of the higher level items?
So my driving anxiety is actually not so much around like having a bigger vehicle as far as like my ability to pilot it. It's more
Right.
about the fact that I, over the years, have had lots of different breakdowns and scenarios that have happened that has really taught me that when I sit in that driver's seat, anything can happen.
Sure.
So
And
I'm
it
always
will.
like, yeah, and I'm like, all right, please just let me get to my destination without any trauma. And so that's a lot of what my anxiety is about. But I think a really good like blanket thing to tell people is that when you see people living on the road or people that are sharing their lives online, um, you're not seeing a lot of the stress and the fear, and people show their accomplishments and show what they're doing, but they're not always including that, like, yes, they were brave and courageous, but they also were really scared while they were being brave and courageous. And so I think people should always remember that, like, to do something that feels big or feels like a big change is out of your comfort zone, you're going to be afraid. It's going to be nerve-wracking. There's just no way around that. So you have to be able to just push yourself through that fear and show yourself that you're capable and get on the other side of it. And then that's really where the confidence is built, by doing that over and over and over again. And eventually you can look back and you go, oh, look at all the stuff that I got through. I can get through this too.
That's such wise advice. And we don't gain confidence until we gain experience.
Yes, exactly.
Anyone that is confident without experience, that's just bravado, isn't it? It's not actually confidence.
Yeah, and usually they get a dose of reality. But yeah, I mean, I feel like 6.5 years I've been on the road and I'm still scared. I'm still getting myself into situations where I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I, know that I can get on the other side of it. And so I guess that's like my biggest advice is that just like be afraid and do it anyway. If you really want it, just do it afraid. Like there's no other way around it.
Yeah, because you've got to do it in order to work through those anxieties and fears. And I couldn't agree more. In my own travels, the mistakes that I've made, the times I've gotten stuck or really screwed something up, or
Mm-hmm.
was afraid of what was going to happen, or if I was going to even make it to a destination, or if I was going to need to get rescued, or any number of things. And that's very much a part of it. And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can even do a better job of making sure people know that I feel that way often. So
Yeah. Yeah. And there's only so much preparing you can do. I think
yeah.
people get stuck in the like, I want to plan for everything. I want to prepare. I want to know all the information before I do the thing that you're going to do. But, there's only so much of that you can do before you're actually hindering yourself. And it's just kind of turning into excuses or reasons that you're holding yourself back and not actually pulling the trigger.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to go and figure it out along the way a little bit
Yes. Yeah.
with a dose of preparation, and maybe a
Yes.
conversation with someone like yourself that
Yeah.
has so much experience, for sure. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about is that like what are some of your daily practices or things that you've done in the Commander that does help you feel like you are in a sense of place in your home?
I have made it very cozy in here. It is like I didn't shy away from having house plants. Is this the question that you mean? Like, how did I make it feel
Yes,
like a home? Oh, okay.
exactly. Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track before I started launching into all my decor.
No, do it. Let's
Um,
talk decor.
yeah, just like making it feel cozy like you would a home, like throw blankets and plants. And I have a full-size queen in the back with a real mattress and just using like warm tones and having fun with it. I think a lot of RVs come really kind of sterile and people are, I don't know, they don't really like think you can hang things on the wall and you totally can. I don't even really have to do that much before I'm ready to drive. I take down my hanging plants, but museum putty is a real trick. Have you heard of museum putty?
Yes, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so things that are like out and on my counter or something, I just stick museum putty underneath it and it rides and it doesn't go anywhere.
That's such great advice. And then it also, you probably collect these little mementos and things from your memories along the way, and now you get to share them in your home.
Yeah, I try not to do too much of that though, because I don't want to have too much clutter. It is a small space, so I feel like the more stuff, the more like suffocated I feel. So I try to be very picky and choosy with what I take in.
You don't have like 600 pounds of all the different rocks underneath somewhere in a storage
At one
bin.
point in time, I did have a little rock collection, and then I was like, I gotta get rid of this. This is ridiculous.
It's the rock collection. It's the same for me. It's like, and then I had to start taking a magic marker to like put some initials of where I found it. So I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't remember where I even got this
yeah,
thing. So
yeah.
yeah. So
It's a real nice practice to look at something and appreciate it, and go, okay, I'm gonna leave it here for somebody else to appreciate. And I think I had to
yeah,
do a
no,
lot of
and
that
you're
even to just get into this space. As I've always been kind of like a collector and an appreciator of beautiful things, and so I kind of had to adapt that mentality to even fit into this rig to be like, okay, I'm gonna like give it to somebody else to appreciate it. I appreciate it, and now I'm gonna let it go. And so that's carried with me into here as well.
it almost seems like you've now transported yourself to these beautiful places, and you're just collecting memories as opposed to things.
Yeah, pictures. Those always work
Yeah,
for to have
lots
a
of pictures.
memory
Yeah,
without a thing.
yeah, for sure. Now, you travel with your cat. People do
Hmm.
travel a lot with their dogs. Like, is it a like a super special kind of cat where it can like? I've not met many cats that are going to be okay with like cruising around the desert.
So I actually started with 2 cats. My other cat was pretty old when we hit the road, and he passed away a few years ago. So now I just have the one kitty, and they both acclimated pretty well. And yeah, she's pretty special. She's a little bit like a dog. We go on walks together, and she follows me around. And
Amazing.
yeah, I keep a tracker on her collar, so I give her some freedom to wander. But if she's gone for more than like 20 minutes, I'm tracking her down because I'm a bit of a helicopter mom. Um, but yeah, she's very happy kitty. She still doesn't love the driving part. She probably never will, but she doesn't get sick and she doesn't really cry or complain. I just made her a panic room. So when it's a drive day, she just goes into her panic room and waits there until it's over. But there's actually quite a few people on the road that have cats.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
you think of like a cat, like a Mancoon or whatever. I guess they're a little more kind of tolerant of unusual situations and stuff. But it sounds like the cat and the mom doesn't really like the drive days. So
Right, yes. She is 12% Maine Coon, so maybe that's part of why
okay,
she's so great. But yeah, I follow a lot of people on Instagram that travel with cats, and some people's cats seem even more chill than mine, where they'll like ride on the dash. I think a lot of truck drivers, like long distance, like semi truck drivers, have cats as well.
this is a whole new set of research I need to do.
Yeah.
I was not aware.
Yeah.
I was not aware. It just seems like that would be really complicated, but maybe that's been my experience with cats. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think with any animal, you have to be patient and you have to train them. And I certainly didn't force her into situations that were uncomfortable with her right away. We moved into my rig and stayed in here for 2 weeks before we even started driving, just so she could get used to it as her new
That makes
house. Yeah.
that makes sense.
And then we keep driving down to a minimum because, like you said, neither one of us like that part. And yeah, other than that, she wasn't super interested in going outside at first, but that's something that has done a complete 180, and now she can't wait to get outside every morning and is climbing trees, and sometimes she even
Awesome.
goes potty outside, which is
Well,
nice.
that's
And
gonna help.
yeah. But yeah, she has her own little chair for my patio. I put the chair out for her, and she hops in her chair and takes a nap in the sun, and she's
There we
living her
go.
life. Yep,
Living her best cat life. That's so
she
fun.
is.
Now, you talk a little bit on your channel about traveling solo. What are some tips that you would give to other solo travelers to help them feel more comfortable about going out there and exploring alone?
I think if you're concerned about it, because we all have our different backgrounds, right, and different experiences, and something I hear from people a lot is that they're more nervous to be boondocking than to be staying in campgrounds and stuff. And I've actually found it to be the opposite for me when I'm in parking lots or when I'm around a lot of people. I feel like my guard is up more, and I'm like, what are they doing? What's going on? So I have found that when I'm out in nature and there's just like a few people peppered around out there, and I don't, I am not worrying as much, because it's people typically that people
Yeah,
have to worry about. Yeah,
so
right.
true.
So if you go
Yeah,
places where there's less people, you have less worries, right? But I
that makes
also, I have, I share my location with my mom. So having a location sharing app is always good. And you can just do that right through Google Apps. You don't even have to have anything special.
yeah.
Having check-ins with people. I don't typically spend a ton of time outside once it's gotten dark. When I'm inside my rig, I usually lock the door. I always have 2 chairs out instead of 1. I have
Yeah.
a motion light right at
Oh,
my
I was
front
going
door.
to ask about that. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so if somebody came up to my rig, I have a motion light. I would never tell anybody what kind of self-defense weapons they should or should not have, but it's a good idea to think about having some accessible outside of your rig as well. So, we have them inside in a spot where you can access them. But when you're outside, if somebody approaches you, like if with your head in the trunk or in a storage compartment or
Yeah.
somewhere, it's nice to have something within reach there as well. But overall, I feel like my experience is that it's not as scary as the news would like you to think. Most people are pretty nice, and
Yep.
I haven't had very many encounters. In my 6.5 years, I've had 3 situations that I have felt unsafe in, and 2 of them were in cities. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's the first lesson, is to spend less time in cities.
yeah. And 2 of them,
Yeah.
actually, I was inside my rig and luckily had my door locked, because both of them was a scenario when somebody tried to open my door and come in. So that's why I say lock your door when you're inside.
And it's interesting, for whatever reason, because I traveled quite a bit in a scout camper on top of a pickup. And it's shocking how many times people think that they are at like an RV show and they're going to just check they
Right?
just
Just
want to
let
like
themselves
see
in.
your camper. They just want to see your camper. And it's like, most of the time when they're trying to open the door, it's because they want to like look and see what it looks like. And I'm like, hello, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, that was not my scenario. Both times were unfriendly scenarios where I was
Yeah.
one time I started having an exchange with somebody that was outside, and he was yelling things at me about he was saying creepy stuff, and so that was definitely
Yeah.
a creepy situation. And then the other time
Yeah.
was in Baja when we were parked in a city and somebody just opened the rig. I'm sure they wanted to rifle through stuff or whatever, but yeah, both times were in the evening and at night when I was inside, and luckily had the door
Yeah.
locked. But yeah, I think just be responsible. Don't get all messed up, like get super drunk and go stumbling around and not watch your back.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, I think my overall experience has been most people are really, really nice and really kind. I guess the last thing that I would say is always arrive to where you're going to camp early enough in the day that you can leave if it feels sketchy and you don't feel like, it's too late and it's dark and you
Sure.
don't want to navigate out and you're like stuck staying somewhere you don't feel comfortable. And always go with a plan B. Like, I usually will pick a spot that I'm going, and then I pick a secondary spot if the first spot doesn't work out. And that way
Well, that
I'm
makes sense.
not feeling like overwhelmed or rushed trying to make decisions in the moment.
And it does seem like that your vehicle would be, if you were uncomfortable, you could get to the driver's seat without ever having to unlock the car. It seems like. Is that
Yes.
true?
Yep.
You can get
Yes.
right into the driver's seat, and you might lose your 2 chairs, but other than that, you could get going.
Yeah. Yeah, that is actually a point too, is like if you cannot have things attached to your rig or have anything too close to where, like, worst case scenario, you need to make a quick escape, you're not like dragging your propane tank or running over your stuff in order to leave.
Sure.
So
Sure.
keeping like a tidy camp is also a good safety precaution.
That just brought up a question. Do you use a composting toilet?
I do.
I think those are the best. Like,
Yeah.
I was not really aware of that until I got my scout camper. And now I'm like, I would never have anything but that in an RV, because you can go weeks not having to worry about where am I going to dump this. That way you could stay in the backcountry for so much longer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had the Nature's Head for the whole time that I've been on the road.
Yeah, that's what I was using. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
it was perfect. It was just amazing. And you basically are making compost.
Mhm.
So
yeah, I like that it's
without getting into
eco-friendly, and
too much detail for our audience, but it's like I think maybe it's like once you've experienced one, you're like, I want to tell the whole world about how cool this toilet is.
Yeah, I mean, are you really like living on the road or camping if you're not talking about your bathroom habits? I don't know. It comes with the territory.
It's like such a hack. It's such a hack, though. It feels like such a win to have those things.
Yeah. I've never had to deal with a black water tank, which is really great. And I think it also makes my fresh water last so much longer. I can get my 50 gallons of fresh water to last a month.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. So then do you typically use like a sponge to clean yourself up, or do you have a shower, or because I
I
found
do.
like a sponge or a wet wipe is pretty nice.
Yeah, so I do have a shower, but my hot water heater has been out of commission for a while. And honestly, when it was working, I didn't use it that much because I just don't like using my resources, and that uses propane and then it uses more water. And I felt like I could
Yeah.
be like, I could conserve my water better if I wasn't using my shower. So I use my shower
Yep.
stall actually frequently. I just don't use my whole shower setup a lot.
Yeah.
I have like um, a little motorized pump that drops into this 5-gallon bucket of water, and I just set the 5-gallon bucket of water out in the sun and
Oh, nice.
let
Heats it up.
let let it warm up so it's not super freezing cold. And then hopefully this is not too grotesque, but pits, tits, and slits.
And there's that new one too that's like called Geyser or something like that, and it just
Yeah,
uses a sponge, and it does heat up the water a little bit, and it's amazing
yeah,
how just being able to clean up a little bit,
yeah,
it does allow you to sit in the backcountry for so, especially if you like to be active, which I like to be active when I'm out in the backcountry. I like to
yeah.
hike and all the
hmm
other stuff, and you kind of want to clean up at the end of the day a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's
just
amazing
to
what
be
just
able to tolerate
washing
yourself.
and just washing your hair in the sink makes you feel like a new person.
Yeah, I don't have that
Oh, you don't have that
problem.
problem, so
Not
you
at
can
all.
conserve even more water.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, those are all like, it's so funny when you talk about that stuff because it is also the reality of travel. Is that
Totally.
like, how do you solve the bathroom problem? Then you figure out like, oh, it's really the compost toilet that makes it work. And then you
hmm
figure like, how do you conserve water? And things like a sponge bath is like, I mean,
Yes.
I bet you humans had to have been doing some version of a sponge bath forever because that's how you conserve water.
Yeah. I've definitely talked about how infrequently I have real showers on the internet, and people are either like totally horrified or they're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like we're like overly clean. We've been kind of taught that we have to be showering every day and that's actually not good for your skin biome, and like but I think it takes some getting used to for people that, if they're used to showering every day, their knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, it's gross. But nobody's ever told me that I smell, and I definitely stay clean. And then when I have my real proper shower, it feels like a spa day. So I love it.
That's perfect.
Makes you
That's
enjoy the
perfect.
simple things in life, right?
It is funny how that works. Or, I mean, do you have like a daily ritual? Is coffee part of your ritual each day, or tea, or something like that?
I do. I have tea every morning. I quit coffee last summer, which is,
Wow.
yeah, so I'm a
You
full
want to
just
talk about
tea.
it?
I mean, it was it was actually in an effort to try and tamper down the anxiety, because since
Sure.
I'm more of an anxious person, I would drink coffee in the morning and I'm like, I feel like this ramps up my anxiety every day. And so but like most people, I was addicted to it and it was a ritual. And so I started switching to just doing like half decaf, and then eventually I started subbing in green tea, and now I just drink green tea in the morning, and that amount of caffeine feels really nice. And I don't feel like I'm
And
as
then
tired.
it's still a ritual, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
nice. So yeah, I make coffee every morning, and then me and the kitty. Lately, the routine has been tea, and then me and Moo go outside, and I swing in my hammock while she eats grass, and that's
Perfect.
that's it.
And like, but isn't that incredible though? Is that by making those changes in your life and choosing to buy a vehicle you can afford and that you can maintain yourself,
Yeah,
you now get to basically be on the equivalent of what everybody tries to do for vacation,
yeah,
like every day.
it's a life hack.
Yeah,
I
it really
think
is.
a lot of people envy it and would like to live this way, but I also think there's a lot of people that, um, like you said, can't really hack it because it isn't an easy life. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of work. It is a lot more involved, and you have to really want it. That kind of freedom isn't just like given to you.
Yeah.
You have to go out there and get it, and then you can't have a shower every morning. So if you're willing
Well,
to
and
sacrifice that.
that's so true. And I think one of the things that, because I do interact a lot with influencers, or influencers want to partner with our organization. And the one thing that I look for, and that I noticed in in your channel, is that authenticity that you have. And if I can give people any advice when it comes to trying to make a living as a content creator or as an influencer, it's like, be true to who you are, and
Yeah.
you will find a tribe that wants to hear your story. It's the
Mm-hmm.
people that are making it all up, or trying to make it look glamorous. I don't think it's sustainable. I think a lot of them burn out. They
So
either spend
yeah,
all their money, they max their credit cards out, or they
yeah,
lose that one lucrative sponsorship and they're done.
yeah. Those glamorous, Insta-worthy moments are absolutely in there, but they are in between a whole lot of real life.
Yeah.
This is real life, like any other life, and there's ups and downs. And this lifestyle is not nearly as convenient as most people's lifestyles. So you're dealing with like making a lot of decisions. A lot of people get decision-making fatigue. You know, you figure out, where do I throw my trash? Where do I get fresh water? Where can I go grab that shower? Where am I gonna camp next? What's that look like? Just where are groceries? Where's the laundromat in the town? You know, you're just constantly. I think people, you get that sort of experience when you're traveling, just like on a normal vacation. But
Yeah.
so if you imagine that like sustained, it can be quite tiring, which is another reason why I choose to do this slowly. So those decisions are more spread out and I don't feel that fatigue as often.
And I get the content that you create. I mean, for those that go and look at your channel, there's an enormous amount of work that goes into that I don't think people ever really realize, because you
Yeah.
have these little, call them a minute or 90-second stories that you're sharing. They have to take you days to produce, because they're really good.
Thanks. Yeah. Content creation is very time consuming. And yeah, like with anything, you don't really know what goes into it until you start doing it. But
Um,
it does always look very easy when on the consumer end, you're like, oh, that was just like a minute. Like, how long could that actually take somebody to make? But yeah, if you factor in all the time that you're actually recording the footage and then all of the editing that goes in, and then song selection and caption writing and all of that stuff is very time consuming. But for me, it's been so amazing that I've been able to turn that into my full-time job, because it aligns with me very well. I've always been a creative person. I've always, initially I was loving photography and writing, and now that's kind of transformed more into videography. I still love the writing portion, although people are reading captions less and less, but, I do feel like it's a nice way that I can express myself creatively. And then the fact that I can turn that into being able to partner with companies that align with me and to tell people about products that I believe in, it's amazing. I can't complain.
what's one of the partnerships that you're most proud of that you've been working with recently?
Well, there's a few. So I've been partnered with Jackery for probably like a year and 3 months, maybe a year and a half at this point. And I mean, that's just a partnership that aligns so perfectly. I use my Jackery all the time. I think it's such an amazing solution for people that want to get solar and they're really like overwhelmed by all the different product or bits and pieces that you have to pick out to make solar work.
Yeah, they
You
just
get a
all
Jack.
plug together,
Yeah.
and you're done.
Yeah. You get a Jackery and it's taken care of and it's all like good quality stuff. So I think it's a really good solution for people in this lifestyle. And yeah, they've just been really great to partner with. Recently, I partnered with Toad & Co., which is like a sustainable clothing company, and I've been wearing their clothes for a few years and was already a fan, but getting to partner with them was really exciting because I learned more about just like the initiatives that they have. They they do the 1% back for the planet. And right now they just released some t-shirts that are like giving 20% back to outdoor featured nonprofits and trying to establish equity in the outdoors. And so just companies like, that get me really excited, that align with my values. And yeah, it's really cool. I'm very picky with who I work with, because I don't want to ever be just like trying to push products, or, I feel like my audience trusts me and I never want to take that for granted. And I respect our relationship. So I try to just only work with the company.
That's the easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it is to work with high quality brands. And then you're not having to make excuses for something that isn't working for people.
Right.
So, no,
right.
That's such. And another question, what about your life or your channels and everything else like that do you wish that people knew, that they understood about you and about what you have to, like, what are the challenges that you wish people understood? And maybe it's like being gentle in the comments, maybe it's other things like that, but what do you wish people knew a little bit more about as consumers of content? How do you wish that people would be more open?
I think you already touched on it, on how time consuming it actually is.
Yeah.
For a long time, I think the climate has kind of changed, but being an influencer or content creator was really kind of, I don't know, made fun of, or like, oh, that's not a real job. And, oh, it must be so hard. You just post pictures of yourself on the internet and then you make a ton of money, like just kind of downplayed and disregarded. And I think it's changing a bit, but I think it's nice. It would be nice if people understood how much effort and time I put into what I am giving them, and that I'm just one person, and I do my best to try to reply to as many comments and as many DMs as I can, but I don't have enough time in the day. And
that's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping to try and get to a point where I am earning enough money that I could hire somebody to take some things off my plate. And so I could have more time for other things. But yeah, I think just understanding that it is very, very time consuming, and it is a lot of work. This is the hardest job and the hardest I've ever worked in my whole life. There's like a whole business side of being a content creator that people don't see. There's like, all the emailing and the negotiating and the reading the contracts and pitching myself and what's that?
And hopefully getting paid.
And hopefully getting paid. Yeah. Yeah. And so there's just, it is a real job, and it is a business. And so I guess just understanding it more as like understanding the big picture of what I do. But I feel like most of my followers are really appreciative and understanding, and are really great and supportive. And I have a really amazing community online, so I really don't have that many complaints.
I also wanted to take a brief moment to thank all of you for listening to the Overland Journal podcast. By listening to this podcast and subscribing to the Overland Journal magazine, you're supporting our employee-owned and veteran-owned business. Impartial reviews and in-depth content like this would not be possible without your support. If you enjoy the podcast, I think you'd really love the print magazine as well. And 100% of that subscription price goes back into creating the content like you're listening to right now. And as a special thank you for your loyalty, we're giving 20% off any subscription. And that even includes our special lifetime subscription, which includes numerous lifetime-only benefits. You can go to overlandjournal.com and use the code OverlandPodcast at checkout. Again, that's code OverlandPodcast at checkout, and that'll give you 20% off. I sincerely appreciate your support.
It seems like it. Seems like that your followers come to your aid if someone's being snarky in the comments or whatever.
Totally, but I would like to amend what I just said with, I think part of that could be because on Instagram in particular, I have a feature set up that only lets people that follow me comment. And so I think I avoid a lot of the trolling
Smart.
because of that. Because on Facebook, it's like a whole different beast. I don't have that control feature on Facebook. And if something does well and kind of gets spit out to a bigger audience, oh boy, is it a nasty place to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's challenging how that happens. I've kind of done a little bit more of the post and ghost, so that way you just don't interact so much with the negative comments. It can be pretty challenging for sure.
Yeah.
So the last question that I've got for you is if you were to give some advice to yourself in 2016, if you could go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
What would be, or if someone's getting new to this, what's a couple key pieces of advice that you would give to someone who is getting ready to go out and have a life on the road?
Okay, so first off, you can't tell me nothing. So if I was trying to give 2016 me advice, unless I was asking for it, I would not be listening. But
that's the challenge.
So if 2016 was actually open to listening to the advice, I would tell her, maybe you should spend a little time getting the mechanics sorted before you hit the road. That would save you a lot of stress, because I feel like I definitely should have done that. I should have spent some time. I mean, I didn't do anything. I did an oil change and I replaced the distributor cap and rotor. I don't know why I did that, and not I didn't do spark plugs. I didn't flush the radiator. I didn't check the transmission fluid. I just I hit the road without really doing anything. I blew a tire. I was on 10-year-old tires in the back.
Oh, wow.
I blew one when I was just I think I was not even a week in. I blew a tire. And so I think I should have probably spent a little more time checking out the mechanics before I just launched myself.
That's great advice. Well, Jessy, thank you so much for being an inspiration to so many. It's been great to see your progress and your story, and it's wonderful to see how your community interacts with you. I have no doubt that you've inspired so many people to take off and do their own solo adventure. So how do people find out about you? Obviously, Slow Roamer on Instagram, but give us all the handles. How do people follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so Slow Roamer on Instagram, that is where I am most active by far. I am slow_roamer on TikTok. And then on Facebook, I believe it's Slow Roamer, just plain old Slow Roamer there too. But yeah, I spend most of the time on Instagram, so that will be where you'll find me the most.
You have a YouTube channel as well, or is that something you've avoided?
Not yet. It's in here. It's working its way out, but I gotta figure out how to have the time to invest in yet another platform. So
it's so difficult. It really is.
Yeah.
Great to have the conversation with you. Good luck with all of your adventures. Good luck with your commander and your kitty, and maybe we'll check back in with you in a few years when you are traveling down the length of the Americas or something.
Oh, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome.